This South African cop ends up going crazy and eventually becomes a serial killer. The story is wild. Now, her name's Rosemary. And Rosemary? She's in her 30s. A police sergeant. A woman who should have been on the right side of the law. But Rosemary has a problem. A big one. A gambling problem. And not just any gambling problem. She's a full-blown addict. The kind who doesn't just gamble for fun. The kind who doesn't know when to stop. The kind who keeps betting, even when there's nothing left to bet. It started small. Maybe a little money on the lottery. Maybe a few rounds at the casino after a long shift. Nothing serious. Just a game. A thrill. But then, she started losing. And every time she lost, she felt it. That sinking, gnawing feeling in the pit of her stomach. That desperate need to win it back. Because in her mind, the next bet, the next one, was going to be the big one. The one that fixed everything. But that big win never came. The money kept disappearing, and the debts kept piling up. The more she lost, the more she needed. And before she knew it, she was in too deep. So, she did what desperate people do. She borrowed. At first, maybe it was just from friends. A little cash here, a little there. Maybe she promised she'd pay them back after her next paycheck. Maybe she even meant it. But soon, that wasn't enough. The debts were growing faster than she could handle. She needed more. And that's when she made a mistake. A mistake that would change everything. She turned to loan sharks. Not banks. Not legal lenders. But men. Dangerous men. The kind of people who don't do paperwork. Who don't ask questions. Who don't care about credit scores. You need money? They hand it to you in cash. No strings attached. At least, that's how they make it seem. But the strings? They're there. And they're tight. Because these guys? They don't play fair. They don't send polite emails about overdue payments. They don't give friendly reminders. When you owe them, you pay. And if you don't, they come for you. At first, they kept it simple. A warning. A threat. Maybe they waited for her outside the police station, leaning against their cars, staring her down as she walked by. Maybe they showed up near her house, just to let her know they knew where she lived. The message was clear. Pay up. Or else. But she didn't have the money. She was still losing. Still gambling. Still drowning in debt. So the warnings got worse. Maybe one night, she came home and found her door slightly open. Maybe nothing was missing, but she knew someone had been inside. Maybe they didn't take anything because they didn't need to. Because the real message was, next time, it won't just be your house we come for. And then, the violence started. Maybe it was a shove in a dark alley. Maybe it was a sudden, sharp punch to the ribs when no one was looking. Nothing that would leave a mark visible under her uniform. Just enough to remind her that time was running out. At first, she tried to manage it. She would go to work, put on the uniform, and pretend everything was fine. To her colleagues, she was just another officer, doing her job, laughing at inside jokes, maybe even staying late to finish paperwork. But behind closed doors, it was different. She was drowning. The gambling wasn't just a habit, it was a compulsion. The sound of slot machines, the adrenaline of placing a bet, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this time, she'd win big. It consumed her. And when she lost, she had to find more money. The debt kept piling up, and with every loss, the threats from the loan sharks got worse. Then, she had an idea. A twisted, horrifying idea. If money was the problem, why not create a way to get more of it? And if someone had to die in the process? Well, maybe that was just the cost of survival. Her first victim was someone she knew well, her own cousin. This wasn't some random person on the street. This wasn't an accident. It was cold. It was planned. It was calculated. The first step? Make sure his death was worth something. And for that, she needed life insurance. So, She got to work. She filled out the forms, answered the questions, signed her name where it was needed. And it was so easy. Too easy. No one asked why she was taking out a policy on him. No one thought it was strange. There were no follow-up calls, no second glances. Just papers, neatly filed away. And just like that, she was locked in. His life had a price tag now, and she was the one who would cash it in. Then, she set the plan in motion. She reached out to him. Maybe she acted friendly. Maybe she told him she just wanted to catch up, to take a walk, to talk like they used to. And why would he say no? She was family. She was a police officer. She was someone he trusted. So, he met her. And for him, it was just another day. Maybe they walked side by side, the sun warm on their backs. Maybe they talked, laughed, shared stories. Maybe he felt safe. But for her, this was a hunt. Step by step, she led him further. Away from houses. Away from people. Away from anyone who could hear what was about to happen. And then, they were alone. The moment was right. The surroundings were quiet. The air was still. She picked up a rock. Heavy. Solid. Cold in her hand. Maybe he didn't see it at first. Maybe he turned to say something, smiling, unaware of what was coming. Then, bang. The first blow landed. Hard. The sickening sound of bone shattering beneath stone. Maybe he staggered. Maybe he tried to turn, confusion and pain flashing in his eyes. But there was no time to react. The second hit came. Harder. Blood splattered across the dirt, dark and thick. Again. And again. And again. Until there was nothing left but silence. His body collapsed. Lifeless. Motionless. And she just stood there. Breathing. Watching. Maybe for a moment, she felt something. Maybe there was a flicker of hesitation, of realization. Or maybe there was nothing at all. She dropped the rock. Wiped the blood off her hands. And then, she walked away. The insurance money came in. 131,000 rand. Just over $7,000. And just like that, she had her first taste of what murder could buy. The first time is always the hardest. But after that, it became easier. The guilt faded. The fear of getting caught? That was nothing compared to the thrill of cashing in. 15 months passed, and she was back at it. But this time, it was closer to home. Too close. It was her own sister. And just like before, she did what she always did. Set up the life and funeral insurance policies. Signed the papers. Dotted every I. Crossed every T. Everything looked normal. Everything was in place. And then, she waited. She couldn't rush this. She had to be patient. Had to make sure everything went smoothly. No mistakes. No suspicion. And when the moment was right, she made her move. She went to visit. Maybe she smiled when she walked through the door, hugged her sister tight, told her how much she had missed her. Maybe they sat together, side by side, sipping tea, talking about life, about work, about family. And maybe, for just a second, Rosemary felt something human. A flicker of hesitation. A moment where she thought about turning back. But she didn't. Because she had already made up her mind. She stood up. Said she was going out for bread. Just a quick errand. Nothing unusual. Nothing to worry about. And then, as soon as she was out the door, the plan went into action. The poison carefully slipped into her sister's drink. And then, she waited. Maybe she lingered outside, listening. Maybe she paced, her heart pounding, anticipation twisting in her chest. And then, something went wrong. Her sister didn't die right away. She coughed, gasped, fought to hold on. And Rosemary? She couldn't let that happen. She stepped forward. Fast. No hesitation. She grabbed her sister by the throat. Tight. Squeezing. Harder. Her sister struggled. Maybe she kicked. Clawed. Tried to break free. But Rosemary didn't stop. She held on, kept squeezing, until the gasps turned to silence, until the body beneath her hands stopped moving, until the life drained out completely. And then, it was over. Another payout. Another successful kill. At this point, she had found a system that worked. Kill, cash in, repeat. But she was getting greedy. By 2015, she set her sights on her biggest target yet, her own boyfriend. And this time, she went all in. 16 insurance policies. Not one, not two, 16. It was ridiculous. Obscene. No one in their right mind would think this was normal. But greed had its claws deep in her now. The payouts were too good. The killings too easy. And now, she was about to cash in big. But this time, she didn't want to get her hands dirty. She needed distance. She needed deniability. So, she hired a hitman. A professional. Someone who would take care of it cleanly, and quickly. No mess. No complications. Just one bullet, one body, one payday. And so, the plan was set. The hitman followed him, watched him, waited for the right moment. Then, when the time came, he raised the gun, took aim, pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The gun jammed. The boyfriend lived. A mistake. A failure. But Rosemary? She wasn't done. Not even close. She tried again. This time, it was personal. She was taking matters into her own hands. One afternoon, while he was napping, she moved quickly, quietly. 4 bottles of gasoline, carefully placed under his bed. Then, a match. A tiny flame. A spark. And then, whoosh. Fire erupted. Smoke billowed. The room was consumed in an instant. But somehow, he escaped. The authorities knew. They weren't stupid. This wasn't an accident. This was arson. Someone had tried to kill him. But proving it? That was another story. They had nothing. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Just a man who barely made it out alive. That should have been the end of it. But for Rosemary, it wasn't over. A few weeks later, he was found dead. Stabbed. 76 times. Not once. Not twice. Not 10. 76. It wasn't just murder. It was rage. It was personal. It was overkill. It was a message. And guess what? The insurance money still came through. Another 131,000 rand. Another payday. By now, the deaths were piling up. One after another. Her niece was next. A child. Family. Someone who should have been safe. But in Rosemary's world, safety didn't exist. She was beaten to death. Not poisoned. Not shot. Not even strangled. Beaten. And for what? A mere 6,500 rand. Not even a fortune. Not even close. But Rosemary didn't care. The money didn't matter anymore. It was the thrill. The control. And then came her nephew. The son of the very sister she had killed. He wasn't just murdered. He was hacked to pieces. The brutality was undeniable. But even that wasn't the worst of it. Then, something unthinkable happened. Her own child. A toddler. A baby. Dead under mysterious circumstances. The details were hazy. The cause? Unclear. No solid proof. No evidence to link her directly. But at this point, nothing was off the table. Nothing. She had killed at least 6 people. Possibly more. And the money? It kept coming in. Over 1.4 million rand. Blood money. And she was still going. Still hunting. Still planning her next move. But even the smartest criminals slip up. And she was about to make her biggest mistake yet. A fellow officer, one of her own, started to put the pieces together. The insurance payouts. The deaths. The strange pattern. It was too much to ignore. Something wasn't right. And they needed proof. They just had to wait. Because Rosemary was about to get reckless. She planned to kill her own mother, her sister, and 5 children. 7 people. 7 innocent lives. Her own blood. This wasn't just another scheme. This wasn't about collecting a quick insurance payout. This was something much bigger. Her grand finale. One massive, orchestrated slaughter. It was bold, ruthless, and she thought she could get away with it. But this time, it was too much for one person to handle. She needed help. So, she did what she always did. She went looking for a hitman, a killer for hire, someone with no morals, no conscience, someone who would do exactly what she needed, no questions asked. She found him, or at least, she thought she did. Maybe they met in some dark, quiet place, a bar, a back alley, a parked car late at night. Maybe she sat across from him, calm and confident, sipping on a drink, her voice smooth as she spoke. Because to her, this wasn't emotional. This wasn't personal. This was business. She didn't just blurt it out. No, she eased into it. Maybe she started with small talk, testing the waters, feeling out whether he was the type of man she could trust with something this big. And then, she went for it. Laid it all out. She told him about her family, about how they needed to disappear, one by one. The mother, the sister, the 5 children. She told him how much money she would make when it was done. Millions of rands in insurance payouts. Enough to wipe away her gambling debts. Enough to start fresh. She gave details. Where they lived. Their routines. When they would be alone. How to make it quick, efficient, clean. She thought she was in control. Thought she had just sealed the deal on the biggest payday of her life. But this time, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because this hitman, he wasn't a heartless killer. He had a conscience. And what she was asking for, it was beyond evil. A mother, a sister, 5 kids. He couldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Instead, he went straight to the police. And just like that, the game was over. Authorities didn't waste a second. They knew what they were dealing with now. A serial killer. A woman who had already killed at least 6 people and was about to wipe out her entire family. This wasn't just another criminal case. This was urgent. A life or death situation. So, they set up a sting. A wiretap. An undercover operation. They needed to catch her red-handed. So, they sent in one of their own. An officer, posing as a hitman. And just like before, Rosemary fell for it. She met with the fake assassin. She gave him the same details. The same plan. She was so confident. She had done this before. She knew how it worked. She didn't hesitate. Didn't second-guess herself. She talked freely, casually, as if she were ordering a meal at a restaurant. She listed off the people she wanted dead. Explained how she wanted it done. Talked about the money she would collect when it was all over. And the whole time, she had no idea she was being recorded. Her voice. Her words. All of it. Captured. Solid. Undeniable proof. They let her talk. Let her dig her own grave. And when they had heard enough, they moved in. The arrest was swift. No warning. No escape. 1 second, she was planning a mass murder. The next, she was in handcuffs. Her crimes exposed. Her secret life shattered. And when she went to trial, there was no doubt. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury didn't need long. The judge didn't hesitate. She was sentenced to 6 life terms. No chance of parole. No chance of freedom. No more gambling. No more scheming. No more killing. Her reign of terror was finally over. But even behind bars, the horror of what she did still lingers. Her name will never be forgotten. A police officer, a protector, turned into one of the most cold-blooded serial killers South Africa has ever seen.